Salam. Welcome. Happy All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, or what's this other one? There's one that everybody seems to like to mispronounce. As it turns out, it's spelled Samhain, and even like English proper speaking witches like to call it that. It's not pronounced that way. It's not pronounced that way. I'm a big fan of language, and the way things are said is very particular, especially these ancient languages and ancient practices. So it's good to get the thing pronounced properly. It's a spell. It's a magic. There's a magic to it, and that's particularly important right now. And the way to pronounce it is Samhain. It's subtle, isn't it? Samhain. S soft wun, W-N, Samhain. It's also spelled S-A-O-U-N or something like that as a transliteration. Anyway, that's an entire sidebar. These are different names for the same thing, ultimately. We get All Saints' Eve or All Hallows' Eve or Halloween, which is the day before the 1st of November. And it's here to recognize the dead, to recognize those that have passed, to recognize the border between this existence and the after. And there's a permeability to it. There's a knowledge that there's not so much in between us and them. So we get all these old practices that have kind of turned into the candy crushing, costume wearing, fun-having American tradition of Halloween, which was brought here by the Irish and Scottish in the 1800s, basically after mostly as they immigrated here after the famine, after the potato famine, and they brought it with them. It was an old practice there for a couple of thousand years at least, and this practice, the All Hallows, as the Christians started to call it, somewhere in the I lost track of the numbers. I didn't write it down. It's like the 700 AD or something, or maybe it was 14. It was a multiple of 7. Long time ago, the Christians started calling it All Saints' Day or All Saints' Eve, and it's ultimately the same thing. It's a recognition of the dead. There's a seeing of the holy dead which have passed that happens at this time. And the reason why it's relevant now, it's like we could have a recognition of the dead somewhere in the middle of summer, but it's not the same. The feeling's not the same. And so we know that now is the time. There's a transition between the lighter period of the year and the darkest period of the year. And in Irish and Scottish tradition, this is basically, it's the beginning of the year, kind of. It's the beginning of the winter, where they understood the dark was coming. The darkness was coming, and it was unavoidable, and they had to deal with it. And so there were fire ceremonies. It was thought to be a way of carrying the sun, helping the sun across the sky on its journey. And that was a way of honoring the sun. And obviously there were ways of honoring the dead. They would honor boundaries specifically. There was an interesting belief that anywhere that had a boundary, for instance, doorways, and also boundaries between property, those were the places where ghosts and ghouls and spirits would live. They resided at the boundary, not in the great space on either side, but at the boundary between two worlds or two places. So we have this moment where the boundary is thin, and they believe that the spirits and the souls all resided very close to us. So we have all these different practices. We decorate the outsides of our homes, and we wear costumes and things so that the bad spirits don't get to us, and the ones that want to get to us, or the spirits that we want to get to us, can reach us. They understand that it's a facade or whatever. This is just kind of a playful thought about this particular holiday. Now, the reason it's important in astrology is because it's one of these cross-quarter days. In Western astrology, the zodiac is based on the seasons, not specifically the exact degrees of the zodiac in the sky, not the specific constellations. That's the common misconception, which is all too common at the moment. People are like refuting Western astrology because it doesn't line up exactly with the constellations. It's not based on the constellations. It's just named after them. It's based on the seasons. So we have these changes of seasons, and we know that those changes of seasons are powerful because we talk about it all the freaking time. Then we have summer solstice, the autumn equinox, which was in September. We have the winter solstice coming up at the mid to late December, and then the spring equinox, which obviously is in spring. It's the beginning of each season in today's calendar. Now, these days were all worshipped by great many societies throughout history, all sorts, all types, mostly in the Western world or in Northern Africa, Middle East, Europe, and Western Russia. There are a lot of other cultures to the east that were much more lunar-oriented. Now, the cross-quarter days are these important days in between. So we have the season, we have the equinox, which was recent, the autumn equinox, and the cross-quarter day is this Samhain, this festival of harvest. So we have a kind of, there's a dichotomy here. We have the harvest, which is a symbol of life, the late harvest in the fall, toward the beginning of winter, according to the Celts, where something that lives now dies for the feeding of those that live. So we have a transfer of energy, we have movement of energy, and so we have an honoring of that which dies necessarily. And these cross-quarter days are like, they're like the full moon phase of each season. So we get the equinox, which is kind of the new moon phase of the season, if you will, the new phase of the season. Then we have the full phase of the season, which is now. We have the fullest expression of this autumn phase, where everything is beginning to shift from very much alive to very much in hibernation or dead. A lot of things die and they come back in the winter, or they don't come back in the winter unless properly planted according to our desires and wishes. And so we have a transfer of life. We have a transfer of energy. We have a transfer of existence. And the season is appropriate that this cross-quarter day happens in the middle of Scorpio. So Scorpio as an energy is the energy of death. So we have Halloween and All Saints' Day and All Hallows' Day by the Christian names. Then we have Samhain, Samhain as the Celtic and old Druid type name of the season, the festival. And if we go further back, we go to the Greeks and the Romans who had Pluto and Hades. And the myth of Pluto is this myth of a rising of Pluto from the underworld to the world as we know it, the earth, the above ground part of it, and a taking of a kind of life. Pluto rises and takes Persephone from the living world. And as Persephone leaves the living world, her mother, the ruler of nature, the ruler of life and vibrancy on the planet, lets everything go cold. It's the transfer of energy. It's the change from one season to the next. It's the change to winter. So we have all of these old myths where we understood this was a time where death came for part of life necessarily so that the cycle could continue. We move into winter, and the veil is very thin. We know that it's here. We know that there's an availability of hidden energies, because it's not just our world that we're working with right now. We're also working with this other side. We can reach into the realms of death or the afterlife or the ethereal and pull energy into our world. And there's a lot of ways to do that poorly or irresponsibly, and there are a lot of ways to do that responsibly. So we practice on these powerful days to afford ourselves a responsible way of gathering energy from another side. Now, Scorpio, ruled by the planet Pluto, ruled by the energy of Pluto. So we have the energy of the Undertaker, the Lord of Death, the realm of the dead. And so we like to play with this. So we Again, we have the solstices and the equinoxes, and they're important astrologically. And then we have these cross-quarter days, which give us a kind of insight into how the season is going. So if we look back at what the equinox had for us when we first started autumn, when we first started Libra season, there was this very specific, this very specific energy of transformation coming about. We had certain things formulating that are still not quite in their fullest extent. We're still waiting for the Uranian interaction with Pluto. We have Uranus as the changer, the shaker, the disruptive energy of the universe, and Pluto, that which actually instantiates change. So one removes the groundwork, removes the foundation, shakes everything all the way down to the very ground, and then Pluto allows for the transformation to actually happen. So we're in this season where that's still building. That's how this kind of started. And additionally, the ruler of this was in a very powerful retrograde cycle where Venus was ruling the beginning of this season in a retrograde cycle. So we're in this very strange reevaluation of the whole concept of what we value in the world. So everything is being shaken. We're getting ready for large-scale change to happen as Pluto is moving through its last few breaths of Capricorn. And there's a lot that's changing. Obviously, look around us. There's wars sparking and protest and contest and all of this very frictional energy, and it's building as this season carries on, and it will continue to build. But the season was kind of flavored with it from the very beginning, and it's a reevaluation of our values. We're looking at what we hold dear and how we maintain that in our lives. And so we have to pay attention to that. Now, that being the case, that being what we were kind of flavored with in the beginning of this season, the next thing we look at is now, is today, is this cross-quarter day where we're looking at what energy is available to us in this most expressed portion of fall, and how do we kind of utilize that to allow the season to take with it what it needs to. Again, this is much like the full phase of the moon. It's the time where we allow things to begin to be released. As energy builds through the season, we get to the center of the season reaches its peak, and then we allow the season to fall away. And with each season, with each cycle, as things fall away, we allow as much of what is needed to fall away to go. Let go. That's the vibe of the season. We allow things to necessarily die. We have Scorpio, which is, again, the realm of death, the realm of transformation, and we must allow things to necessarily die so that we can grow into a new cycle, so that we can grow into a new energy. Scorpio. The Sun in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio. And at the same time as all of this energy is in Scorpio, we have this opposition with Jupiter. I was talking about this a couple of days ago, and it was very particular because it was a full moon. And now we have this, what we're looking at is kind of a full phase of the fall cycle. So we're, again, looking at this powerful opposition, this powerful polarity between Scorpio, Mars, Mercury, Sun, and Taurus, Jupiter. And Taurus is the sense of safety, the sense of comfort, the sense of that which is needed to feel just okay with the world. Whatever is needed to be in your environment, in your experience, in your own thought process, your internal milieu, whatever is necessary to bring you to a space of absolute stillness, because there's no need to move. There's no need to shift or change. Taurus is that stability, is that stasis, is that comfort with the current. And it's a very powerful place to be. And Jupiter wants to expand what that means and expand what that actually does for us. So Jupiter in Taurus is giving us the ability, or the resources. Resources is the proper word. Jupiter in Taurus is bringing us the resources to stay in that stillness, at the same time as the Sun and Mars and Mercury are bringing us more quickly. Jupiter stays in Taurus for a year total. It's there for another 8 months. It's there until May of next year. And so Jupiter in Taurus holds us in this space of improving our resourcefulness, improving our availability of wealth and resource and comfort. Now, that's very much an external experience, and it can also be an internal experience, because we're not all, flush with cash or perfectly well off in our lives, or, we have all of the food and the sex and the money that we want, but in an internal space, that is the ultimate goal, because Taurus doesn't much care about the external world. If everything is satisfied internally, there's no need for much exterior. There's only need for that which is absolutely necessary to maintain the physical form, and the internal world can remain at peace because it is at peace. That's all. No, don't overcomplicate it. Why question it? Why worry about it? So we're working with the polarity between Jupiter and Taurus, and it stays there until May. And these faster moving things, Mercury being the fastest at the moment, Mars also following it, or rather Mercury just passed Mars in Scorpio and created a kind of unification between our action and our thought, or let's switch that, between thought and action, the unification of information and energy as we move it, and the way that we move it in the first place. The will, the force which moves, Mars. The ability to actually do something. To do something with whatever it is, and the mercurial element coming in from this very deep shamanic intuition, because the shaman lives in the realm of Scorpio. The shaman is Scorpio. It's one of the archetypes of Scorpio. And so we get Mercury, this fast mover that has no time for second thoughts, because it is always thinking forward, playing out through this realm of Scorpio. So we get to move with the energy of the shaman. We get to move with the energy of the mystical, the magical, the one who is able to move between life and death, to move between the corporeal and the ethereal, to move between this world and that which transcends our world, the constantly existing and always mostly disinterested. We think the universe is interested in our tiniest movements. By and large, no. It's like it's all just happening as a way of the universe experiencing itself. But the movement between this corporeal existence, the existence where we can actually look out and feel and touch and smell and taste and hear the things around us, and the ethereal, where the senses become much more nebulous, much more indescribable. There's a unification of senses in certain ways, and there's a dissolution of senses in another way, and the shaman is the one that is able to translate from one realm to another, from one dimension to another, can translate that which the ethereal is trying to transmit into the realistic energy and language of here. So we get to have a lot of fun with this. The sun also brings a lot of vitality through that experience. There's a need for exploration. There's a need for digging and taking apart and picking away at things. So we're not just here like scratching the surface. That would be precisely the wrong thing to do. So in this season, as always in this season, the surface is not enough. You want to punch directly through the surface and go to somewhere else deeper. The surface is not of your concern. It is purely a result or a remnant or a shadow or a thin veneer on top of that which actually matters. So we explore into this deeper realm. We play with the certain kinds of magic that aren't necessarily available to us in the other parts of the year. We want to work with the transition. We want to work with the transfer of energy. We want to work with the transmission from the beyond to here. And we're in the realm of death. In the sense of the tarot. So this death card, the card of death in the tarot, is the card of Scorpio. And then we also have the Eon card, which traditionally is associated with the element of air, but unofficially it's been associated with the element of air since long before Pluto was discovered. So then we get these three elements in the tarot which are now associated with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so Pluto is the Eon card, and the Eon card is not just an element. It is an element of infinite potential and transformation. There's the containment of the high spiritual knowledge and the also embodiment of that knowledge. There's a unification between realms in that card, in that energy. We have the Pluto card of the Eon, and we also have the Death card, which is obviously it's the death card, but it's associated with Scorpio, and that association is not just the association with the passage of life. It's the transfer of energy. It is the transmission of energy from one state to another. There's a transformation, and some other archetypes are like the phoenix, an obvious one, where the phoenix dies and is reborn from its own ashes. That's the energy of the season. So we play with all of that. And that's really the biggest energy that we're working with at the moment. That's the biggest thing that we're working with for the rest of this final phase. So it's in an interesting way to put it in darker terms. It's death on death on death. There's multiple layers of the season of death currently lining up and interacting with one another. So we're acting in a way that transforms us. We're thinking in a way that transforms us forward. We are vitalized. We're invigorated by the process of that transformation, and we're fed constantly by the energy of this Taurian Jupiter. We're fed by the sense of wealth, the sense of comfort, the sense of peace that is brought on by this bigness of Jupiter flowing through the sign of Taurus in this. It's called an opposition because it's directly opposite on the zodiac, but it's truly the polarity that allows for the full expression of each energy. You can't have one without the other. So when we have both in this particular instance, we're working with a great abundance. The thing that unifies Taurus and Scorpio is abundance. Taurus, worldly abundance, solitary abundance, the kind of abundance that makes it okay to be just you in one place at one time and not have any care otherwise. And Scorpio is the kind of abundance that makes everything possible, that makes everyone able to interact with one another and collaborate with one another. There's a wealth and abundance in all of that allows for things to not just be a constant shredding apart of each other to gain or gather wealth. There's a sharing, there's a unification of the collective wealth in Scorpio. So we have the polarity between those two energies where it's mine and ours. There's quiet, simple, contained, stable. That's an important aspect of this. The stability of Taurus really holds all of this together. So it's a great time to allow things to actually shed. We're not destabilized by the change, which is fantastic. The world at large everything that's going on around us, everything that's shaking in the world around us is ultimately, well, it's concerning, and there's reason to be concerned about it, but there's no reason to believe that it will change your place in the world. Meaning that will change your ability to retain a sense of safety, a sense of solid, a sense of safety and a sense of solid within the world. So there's a lot moving in this. If you have things in Scorpio in particular, it's a very interesting time. It's a powerful time. It's a powerful part of the year as these energies move through. But this focus on death and transformation is second nature, so it may not feel necessarily intense. For a lot of people, it will. If you have things that challenge Scorpio, for instance, Aquarius and Leo, these other fixed signs, and also Taurus, but particularly Aquarius and Leo will be very heavily challenged in this. As you move through, focus on allowing the things to be removed, released, renunciated. Let old patterns go away. Let old thought processes die. Let old predispositions about what you are supposed to be in the world just float away into nothingness. We're moving into the final phase of the year. This is the last phase of the year as the sun moves closer and closer to its darkest point. We're moving into the part of the year where everything shifts away. So it's It's just multiple levels of symbolically rich awesomeness as we just move towards getting rid of all of the shit that we don't need. And that leaves room for much more expansion, much more light, much more abundance as energy grows, moving past the winter solstice. It's interesting. I was listening to this podcast, and a guy was talking about, he's a very successful producer now, and he owns a fairly large media company at this point, and he started out as someone moving from a small conservative town in Texas to Los Angeles to become an actor. He wanted to be an actor, or he thought he wanted to be an actor, and that was his dream, and that was his aspiration, and that was what he was going to do. And he showed promise in his own small town as a reasonable candidate for acting as a career, and he moved to Los Angeles, and as he tried into the world of acting in the realm of Hollywood, in the realm of actors, he realized that was not his calling. Not because he wasn't good at acting, but because he wasn't an actor in the sense of someone who was truly great at acting. He was a producer. He was a person who was able to understand the process of acting and understand the concept of embodying a different archetype to portray a certain thing. But he was much more acutely aware of the whole picture, not just a single character. And he could have held on to his desire to become an actor and kept trying at that and trying at that and trying at that. And maybe he could have been something. Maybe he could have been reasonably good at it, or maybe he could have been a huge name. But at some point, he allowed part of his dream, his aspiration, to shift. So we have a particular aim, and we allow certain things to shift as new information comes to us. And that's particularly what this season is about. This part of this season is about, is letting go of the things that need to shift so that our trajectory can be appropriately recalibrated. That's all I got. That's today. That's Halloween. That's All Hallows. That's this season in particular. Allow some death. allow some transformation, allow some things to burn off, light a fire in your life to guide the sun across the sky, and allow certain things to be drawn to you in that process as old energy dies and new energy is able to be reborn. And that's all. Have a fantastic rest of your day and enjoy whatever festivities you engage in. Do some dances for the dead, play with lively humans, enjoy indulgences, and respect the dead. Salam.
Civic